Hi, this is Wes Simpson. I'm founder of LearnIPVideo.com, and I'm here today at NAB New York with Michael Cronk, who is the chairman of AIMS, who is the Alliance for IP Media Solutions. And Mike is going to give us a lot of perspective about how all of these different technologies fit together, and also give us a little bit of insight as to how the market for IP media solutions is developing. So, Mike, in addition to what you do for AIMS, why don't you tell us what your role is with Grass Valley?
Sure, and great to be with you, Wes. My role at Grass Valley is Vice President of Advanced Technology. So all of our cloud software stack and what we do there, I'm in charge of that.
Wow, a lot of things going on there,
There are a lot.
huh?
Yeah,
and,
busy
and
time.
anything interesting that has happened recently that you can talk about? Any new developments that have come out that you think folks might be interested in?
Well, in terms of products from Grass Valley or
Sure.
AIMS, yeah, I mean, well, in April, around the normal NAB time, we introduced the Agile Media Processing Platform, which allows people to collaborate and do live production from really anywhere in the world, running and processing video in the cloud or on-premise data centers. So, got a number of customers using that, and it's transformative, we think. So it's a pretty exciting time.
Pretty good timing there,
It just kind of happened that way, so that the need
huh?
has gone up. But we're looking forward to getting back to normal. We can see everybody face to face. There's still a need for
Oh yeah.
on-premise systems and cloud-based systems, and so it's a great time to be a part of the industry, I think.
Yeah, yeah. So heading up AIMS, I'm sure is a big responsibility. You have lots of things going on. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what AIMS does and how it relates to the rest of the media industry?
Yeah, well, saying heading up AIMS is a big responsibility, but we're about 100 company organization, or there's membership from 100 companies. It's really member led and member driven, and so there's a lot of fantastic and talented people that make AIMS do what it does. But really, I guess the way to do that is just I've got a few slides. I promise, not a lot,
Oh,
that
good.
I'll share to do that. Um, to give you a little bit of an introduction, and you let me know if you can see my screen.
Looks good.
All right. So um, AIMS, if I get the right, there we go. It's first of all, it's a nonprofit, so it's a trade alliance, 501c. It's open to really any company. It's all our funding is via membership dues, and we apply about 75 to 80% of that directly back into marketing activities to promote IP. And we're really aligned around a one common goal. And this AIMS was formed in December of 2015, and that goals remain the same. It's to foster the adoption of one set of common, ubiquitous, standards-based protocols for interoperability over IP in the media and entertainment industry. And recently, because there's been a strong push by a number of member companies into Pro AV, that's really kind of expanded beyond just media and entertainment to media in general, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And so that common goal really unites us, and we're all about a standards-based approach. Um, and so one of the key things that AIMS develops is a roadmap where our members vote on standards that we believe the industry should be adopting, and then we market that, promote that, do various educational activities around it, and that's really what AIMS does. It's also because we work with all the organizations that make these standards, we don't make the standards ourselves. We endorse those standards, but a lot of the key contributors to SMPTE 2110 and the AMWAS standards, AES, are all members and participate in AIMS. It's a great opportunity for people to talk about, have the meta conversation about, well, what do we need to do next? What are the problems there? And then we can kind of advise and recommend. And so we're in really close partnership with all the key open specifications and standards organizations such as AES, SMPTE, VSF, AMWA, for example.
Hmm.
So as we've done that, we developed this roadmap in 2015. There was no 2110. So put SMPTE 2022-6 on the roadmap, and A is 67. Uh, and then as SMPTE 2110 got to the adoption stage, we typically vote on things that are defined. So you have to wait till it gets through the process within SMPTE. But really the whole SMPTE 2110 basic suite is all part of the roadmap. And then we've done a lot of things with AMWA in terms of connection management, discovery, and then system resource, and all that work got embodied in another specification done by the JTNM, the Joint Task Force and Network Media, called JTNM Technical Recommendation, or TR 1001-1. And what those body of specifications do is make it easier to implement, configure, deploy IP systems in the real world. So we continue to work on the roadmap, and there's some exciting things that we can talk about probably a little bit later in that
Yeah.
vein.
So out of all these standards, how many of them and specifications, I guess, how do you handle the evolution of those things? As new versions come out, like PTP just went through an update with the IEEE and things like that. Is in order to be on the roadmap, is it always the latest version, or is it, kind of, well, we'll make sure that this doesn't break anything that's already out there?
Yeah, there's no kind of carte blanche for any of these standards. So as those versions come about, the idea is that we adopt them. Sometimes we get a little bit behind and on the latest version of 2110-10 or something like that. So there's a lag there as in a 100-member organization. But that's the idea, is that we stay current. And we do have the discussions about whether something could be deprecated, right? Is 2022-6, should we take it off the roadmap? Should we be recommending that now? Really, de facto, pretty much everybody's going the 2110 route, unless sometimes you're doing uncompressed over WAN and you want to have audio and video always be in sync. And of course, with SDI embedded, you get that for free, right? So but that's really how it works in practice.
So could you talk a little bit about some of the different groups within AIMS, some of the different activity functions that you have going on?
Sure. So fundamentally, AIMS has two main working groups. There's the marketing working group and the technical working group. Both of those have chairs. John Mayotte, who a lot of people know from SMPTE, and he was the document editor for 2110, runs the technical working group. And we currently, Andy Warman for 5 years really ran the marketing working group. I'm now the acting chair, and Rena Rutherford Matthews is a deputy chair. She's from Imagine, and we're looking to kind of find a full-time chair after next board elections, which are coming up soon. But the marketing working group really does the planning for what events, how are we going to work with the other partners in the IP showcase events that we've come to know at IBC and NAB. We just ran the IP Oktoberfest, collaborating on things like the summer sessions that you were tremendous in helping us with, Wes. So they're really about the marketing. How do we spend our dollars to promote IP? The technical working group meets every other week, and this is, I think it's one of the huge value adds of AIMS, because again, the people in that group are typically people that are involved in AMWA, involved in SMPTE, and we're able to have kind of conversations and understand where things are, and begin to talk about issues, and then sometimes we've even formulated letters or documents that can go to those groups. So it's a great, very it's exciting to be a part of, to have all these brilliant people talk about where we need to go and what we need to do and the challenges they're facing, and to be able to collaborate that across an industry. Really phenomenal. And I've been in this industry for about 25 years, and when we formed AIMS, it was kind of the first time that I was able to interact with my peers on that level, because we were all committed to this common goal that we believed that it was good for the industry to have a standards-based and open specifications approach to IP networking. And so that fosters a environment where people can share some key ideas and help to formulate what is it we're going to do there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, without the open standards, we'd have all these, incompatible things. Yeah, they might all work over the same Ethernet fabric, but if they don't talk the same software language and use the same signal formats, it'd be absolute chaos out there, I think.
Yeah, and frankly, I think if you go back to IBC of 2015, it was chaotic. There
Hmm.
were multiple proprietary standards. VSF, I think, if I remember right, had maybe TR03 was out or not, which is kind of a predecessor to 2110 in some ways. And there was gonna be a group formed in SMPTE, but not even yet. And people wanted a standards-based approach. And in my role in Grass Valley, and I know that other companies had the same experience. You talk to some of the key customers who are looking to buy IP systems, who understand the benefits of IP, but are like, I'm not buying anything. I don't want to invest in a dead end, and it's not clear where this is going. I want a standards-based approach, and credit to the early members of AIMS, including some key broadcasters like Fox and NBC and others who kind of came on board and said, hey, let's go do this. Let's push for a standards-based approach. And we really kind of brought the whole industry with us, thankfully, at that time. And now we have a standard.
Well, that's great. And you should be congratulated for those efforts. I mean, I think without that, who knows where we'd be right now. But let's talk a little bit about some of those key customers. I mean, you don't have to name names and things like that, but I'm kind of interested. Where do you see the state of the market today for a lot of the technologies that are on the AIMS roadmap? Where do we stand?
Well, it's a great question. I think if you think of the kind of standard, Jeffrey Moore crossing the chasm curve of adoption, I think we're way past the early adopters phase. I mean, obviously not everybody's adopted. People have existing SDI systems that they're using and they work fine. And so you're not just going to like replace them before you've amortized that investment. But if you look at new OB trucks being built today, the vast majority of those are full IP based on the 2110 standard, and they're in use and they're on air, and the cameras speak IP and the switcher speaks IP, and it's got the routing is a Cisco or an Arista or some type of network switch like that. And so you look at that, you look at facilities like WCAU, which is the NBC owned and operated station in Philly. BBC Wales just completed and went on air with their fully 2110 based system. There's QVC in Japan. There's a whole wall that we have of the customers that have adopted, and I'm not going to remember all of them, but there's quite a few, and it's become something that people do, and it has certain advantages that allow for that, and so we see that continuing, and business is good on the IP front, I think, because of the work that we as an industry collectively did. I think there's still things to improve on, and we're happy to talk about those, but really we've come a long way.
So where do people go today when they're trying to decide whether they should go IP or not? What kinds of things do they look at, and how do the economics look for IP? I've heard stories both ways on that.
Yeah, well, I think first of all, I think a lot of customers will take a total cost of ownership approach to it. What is it? Not just what does it cost to buy, but what does it cost to support, maintain, and that whole thing. I think where IP really shines, and what we've seen, and when we gather this data from the various use cases that are out there, certainly if format flexibility, and specifically the ability to go from HD to UHD without having to change out my infrastructure because I just bought a switch that has the bandwidth to handle either, and the products can handle either. That's a huge driver. Signal count, particularly in the area of monitoring, is a huge driver. The amount of monitoring in a modern OB truck, as an example, that people want and need to just deal with the customer needs, and everybody wants to see the images. You just can't do it to that extent in SDI anymore. We've eclipsed those types of 1,000 by 2,000 type of matrices, or 1024 squared. And then you go UHD, and it's pretty much hopeless, right? Because you're dividing by 4 effectively, so you get a 256 squared router. So when you need that kind of throughput, need to deliver signals to everybody, IP shines. The other area is resource sharing. I've got a facility and some expensive real estate. I'd really like to put that somewhere else. And I have a pool of shared resources, be they multi-viewers, be they switchers, be there other things that I can attach to and light up a control room. But I don't have to, for every PCR that I have, I don't have to buy dedicated kit anymore. So in that case, the economics saves, because I might save on real estate costs. My equipment room can be, across the Hudson River. It can be, and I don't have to buy as much of what I did. So, I think if you just did, this kind of 512 squared router, SDI, all SDI equipment versus IP, the IP system, I think still today would be more.
Yeah, I've heard that.
But then if you factor in these other things and look at the whole picture, it's different. And I think the one area of focus, and you see this in the roadmap that I had up there, is that it's about the intangible cost, where we're working really hard to come up with standards to make it easier to set up and deploy systems. And the JT&M TRR 1001 suite of specifications really does help that, such that I can plug things in. It knows how to work with DHAP, assign all the IP addresses. I don't have to type in 2,000 IP addresses right. And then I can do connection management, and whatever overall router control system I buy, it speaks AMO ISO 4 and ISO 5. I can make connections with anybody's product. So I have that freedom of choice. As those kind of system setup and configuration things come together, what we're doing is we're shrinking the time that it takes to set this up, shrinking the time it takes to troubleshoot, and then makes it easier to deploy these systems. Because I think in the early days, the places where it was happening at the big networks, it was happening with the very largest companies that had a technical staff that knew how to kind of slog through all the stuff, and making it simple is a really key theme that I think we're still working on, but we've come a long way.
So how important is the, industry-wide migration to, virtualization and, remote facilities and things like that? How important is that to the AIMS IP roadmap?
I think virtualization and getting to the cloud is kind of the bigger story behind the story, if you will. The way that Thomas Edwards, that a lot of us know, of Fox, now of Disney, put it one time. I think I'm going to misquote him probably badly, but it's, IP is the on-ramp to the virtualized future. Get all your signals in IP. Now I can send them anywhere. I can send them to a computer. I can run this with a software process. You can't do that with SDI.
Right.
There's not an SDI connection to your VM farm or to AWS. You need to be IP. And so it's this fundamental step, but the big goal, if you will, is getting to that virtualization such that I can deal with elastic needs. Sporting events or Olympics, they happen and there's a spike in what I need. But then I can operate on much less equipment. I don't have that. So I don't, if you typically in the, I call it the old days, in the hardware centric SDI world, you built to that peak because you had to, but now you can maybe build to something smaller, save some money, and if you can burst up and do those things that you need, virtualization helps you do that. And
Hmm.
so that's a big driver behind it. And so IP is a stepping stone. IP itself, in terms of like the format flexibility that I talked about, the ability to share resources, um, all those, the ability to get more I/O than you could to meet customer demands for, a large OB truck with, I don't know how many cameras anymore they have, like a PGA event or a NASCAR event, huge, right?
Yeah.
Number of cameras. You can fulfill those with IP, and so it actually has benefit today. It helps you, saves you from technology obsolescence. But in addition, the vision is it gets you to that virtualized future.
Yeah, I think virtualization is also going to open up some new things that we haven't been able to do before in media. Some of the more automated processes, some of the things bringing AI to bear, et cetera.
Absolutely.
That's going to really have an
Big
impact.
big data, all those things become more easily attainable.
Yeah, yeah. So now the interesting thing, or one of the things I find really interesting about Ames, is that you're kind of, spreading your wings a little bit. I mean, it grew up very much as a, broadcast quality, media and entertainment kind of focus, but that's changing now, right? Or are you
Yeah.
expanding?
Yeah, let me talk to you about a new initiative within Ames that we're really excited about. It's called IPMX, or IP Media Experience. It's really bringing a standards and open specifications approach to the pro AV industry. So the pro AV industry is actually, just from a market standpoint, it's a healthy, growing industry. You think about it, corporations, governments, people are using video and audio more than ever in conference rooms and all these things, and there are some standards related. Well, not standards in the strict, ISO sense of the word standards. There are some ways that people um, move video over IP in the Pro AV, but there really isn't an open standard, an open specification like we have with the SMPTE and AMWA combination. And so within Ames, there was this voice within Ames. About 25% of our members have a business in the Pro AV segment. They said, "Hey, this would be really good to bring a standards-based approach into that." So we ran some surveys, some discussions, and kicked off a Pro AV working group. I mentioned the marketing working group and the technical working group. A subgroup of the marketing working group that does both technical and marketing work is the Pro AV group, and they've really they're looking to expand on what 2110 and AMWA gives. There's things like content security, um, just
Yeah, yeah. As opposed to just control plane security, Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
and in Pro AV, I mean, broadcasters are like, okay, I'm going to buy a 25 switch with 25 gig ports. You go into somebody's office and they have a 1 gig or
Yeah.
maybe a 10 gig, but it's Pro AV, so they want to show UHD. So it's like, which compression standards marry with SMPTE 2020 2110-22, and then the other piece of it is not everybody in a conference room is going to have a PTP generator, right? So how do I do timing? So there's a number of things like that, and with Pro AV, and this is going to help broadcast as well. Got to keep it simple.
Hmm.
In the broadcast, you have professional SI organizations. The broadcasters themselves have a knowledge base and training to kind of engineer it out. Whereas in Pro AV, it's got to be a lot more plug and play. And so the improvements on the foundation for IPMX is 2110 and AMWA ISO4, ISO5, TR 1000, TR 1001-1. But it's going to be building on these other things, adding some things to the Ames roadmap over time that specifically work for IPMX.
Hmm.
And really, so it's the purpose of IPMX. If you look at it looks like the same definition, just saying it's for the Pro AV industry, right? And
Okay.
so there's a lot of activity in this. It's led by David Chiappini, who's the head of that subgroup, and they're getting I think some really good traction in the Pro AV. it's a cacophony of voices in that industry. But we think that just as having a set of open standards was helpful in the broadcast industry, that it could be helpful in the pro AV industry. And so there's a number of members, and actually some of the membership growth that we've seen in AIMS, I would say over 75% of the new members this year have been from the pro AV industry as this kicks off. And it's an exciting time because as you see, SMPTE just went through its rebranding and whatnot. I think everybody's recognizing that there's this thing called video where standards make sense in a broader sense. And so there may be some partnerships there as well in the future.
So is IPMX going to be a fork in the roadmap? Is it going to be a subset, a superset? How is that going to, fit with the rest of the things that you've already done in the media world?
Yeah, I think the honest answer is we won't know until we get there.
Okay.
These actual additions are being developed. A lot of the people that are involved in the Pro AV subgroup within AIMS are also now participating in AMWA and participating in SMPTE. And so these things are being drafted and worked on. And then what AIMS does is we come together and we take those documents, we deliberate on them, and we vote to put them on the roadmap. And we may, as we do that, need to say, these are the ones for broadcast and these are the ones for Pro AV. I'm hopeful that maybe that's not the case and these add to both, but I don't have that crystal ball, and it's really a member-led thing, so it's not for me to say.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And when do you see this effort? What are the timelines associated with the IPMX effort?
Well, I'm positive, but that's a question that I ask all the time, Wes. So I probably can't give you the total accurate effort. I can tell you that with the body of standards that are kind of already part of the AIMS roadmap, there are members of AIMS, vendors, if you will, that are offering products and showing interoperability that ties in with IPMX. For example, if the content protection piece isn't fully figured out, but if you don't need, not everything needs content protection. So if you don't need that, you can use 2110-22 with JPEG XS and have an IPMX system today, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And those
mm-hmm.
are out there. So
yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. And then market size. I mean, the Pro AV market's pretty big, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't have numbers off the top of my head, but when I've looked at it, it's in a lot of ways it's bigger and the growth is higher, right, than broadcast.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. So what else does do you think AIMS needs to be doing? Where do we where do we go forward?
Well, that's a great question, and it's one that we asked ourselves quite a bit because AIMS was very successful, I think, in being a catalyst and working with other organizations. It was certainly a team effort to bring things like 2110 to the market. So as a board, we meet and periodically kind of refine our objectives and what are we here for? Is our mission complete? And we believe there's areas of kind of simplifying installation, adding various standards and specifications to do that. That's an unfinished work that we continue to partner with the standards and specifications organizations to work on. Pro AV, another piece of unfinished work. But even as you look at the adoption of IP in the adoption curve, I said we're out of the early adopter stage, but I think we're still on the uphill side of that. It's not like 50% of all broadcasters have implemented IP. So there's tremendous push on things like education. And so that's why AIMS is active in the summer sessions that you were involved in. Also, we just finished a very successful event called IP Oktoberfest. We had quite a few people that could learn about IP. We partner with so many different organizations and point people to other educational resources as well to get the message out, to give people information about how people are using IP, what the benefits are, and to answer questions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and I think a big part of what so you talked about the education, and also the ongoing industry outreach. Having, hosting events at places like, um, SIMTE ATC. Of course, we're talking here now at NAB New York. The virtual events that are happening around. It's really interesting. Do you see Ames getting involved with CES maybe?
You're going all the way to consumer.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Oh,
that one I don't see, but
right.
who knows? I guess yeah, that's not on any kind of near or long term radar.
So kind of drawing
But
the line at Infocom, huh?
at Infocom and yeah, IES, those kind of shows,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah, that'll
uh,
be interesting. So, anything else you want to share with the audience? I mean, how hard? It sounds like it's pretty easy to get involved with Ames if somebody's interested, whether you're a technology provider or an end user or anything like that. Any words of wisdom there?
yeah, well, if you're interested in either promoting standards-based IP or interested in learning about it, um, interested in finding a way to, where do I plug into this industry, and how do I do that, and where can I get just a sense of what's happening. Um, all the real key players in these different organizations, generally members of Ames, we're working, pushing. It's a great place to start, and it's really very easy to become a member. It's a very open organization. Our bylaws are right on the website. You can find in there, download them. There's a one-page form that says I agree to the bylaws, and you specify whether you want to be an associate member or a full member. Those dues look it up on this website, but I believe they're 3,500 and 8,000, I think, for
Uh-huh.
associate and full respectively. You sign up, and then even as an associate, you have access to any activity within Ames, can attend anything. The difference between full and associate is that full members have voting privilege, so voting for board members, voting for things on the Ames roadmap. So if you want to have that level of influence, you would need to be a full member. But it's very easy to join, and it would be welcome. And we found that a lot of organizations that we didn't know have come in and relayed to us, this is fantastic. It really helps us to plug in and get involved in some for them new business opportunities. So
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's something that is a much more manageable size network, and especially the technical committee. I know every 2 weeks you guys are hammering away at some new aspect of what's going on or trying to get things to work together better. So that's always exciting.
yeah, it's a great way to learn about the standards, just be able to talk to the people that are actually making them.
Yeah. Well, isn't that great? Well, Mike, thanks for your time today. We're going to have a bunch more content in the Ames track here at NAB New York. So we've got people talking in more detail about, I think, almost all the things that you touched on. So thanks for kind of giving us the overview, and especially thanks for giving us your insight on how the IP market is going. I think that's really important that people understand that it's not a lab phenomenon. It's not only for the big, multi-billion-dollar broadcasters. It's a viable technology that a lot of people can put to work today.
Yeah, absolutely, Wes. And thank you for what you do for the industry, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Have a great one.
You too.